extra climb.
Welcome. We are sitting with Ross, David.
Hi, Linda.
And Jim. My name is Linda Sinker. We're on Cars and Crafts Facebook page, YouTube, whatever. Talking about Formula One this past weekend in Saudi Arabia. David, I'm turning over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Want to thank Jim for hosting us. Jim's business, ReinCARnatiin, 6085 Terminal Avenue. If you have a car that's been in your garage or somebody else's shop for the last 20 years, bring it to Jim. He'll actually get it on the road looking fabulous. That's what he does. 20 cars in the shop, Jim, close to it right now?
Pretty much.
And everything from 19, what is it? What year is that REO?
No, typically mid-20s to mid-70s.
And American, European, Italian.
Imported, British especially.
Yeah, you've got a couple E-type convertibles you're finishing up for yourself. Beautiful.
I have 2 more now than the last time you were here.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Does that count the one that's over at, where was it at? The detail shop?
Oh, that's
Is that part of the shop?
yeah, but that's a Chevy, not a Jaguar.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Jaguar.
Correct.
All
Anyway.
right. Here we are. Saudi Arabia is the penultimate race for this season. And I like that, Ross, because how often do you get to use the word penultimate?
Exactly.
It's difficult, right, to find those situations.
If you don't work at a pen factory, you never get to use it.
And we don't, and we haven't.
You have to be at the best pen factory, though.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Or the second best, if it's the penultimate.
Shooting for the best.
There you go.
Okay.
Nice. Speaking of shooting for the best, there was a lot of shots fired.
Wow.
I know. This is good. This is why we get paid the big bucks, gentlemen. In Saudi Arabia last week, brand new track.
There's pay.
They weren't sure it was going to be finished for the race, but it was. And now I'll turn it over to somebody else to jabber because we are full of opinions at this stage.
It was a very long race.
Well, which was exacerbated by restart after restart.
Restart.
And standing restarts are painful.
Yeah.
Because they so often turn into a turn 1 accident.
I was surprised that standing restart was the going forward policy. I would think after the first standing restart they'd go to a rolling start policy.
Well, it's a default. F1 rule is the default is a standing start unless there's a specific reason to not do a standing
like weather,
right. Traction, slippery surface, or that there was debris or a failed
Well, there was lots of debris.
corner worker station or something.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
But Jim's right. I think that thered be a lot less contretemps if they would go to a rolling start. I've had my coffee this morning.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
But then you'd have people arguing about, well, there was too much space between he and I, or too little space, whatever. So I guess, as Ross pointed out, it's the default rule, and it's correct.
So we'll talk about the race. Obviously, the race was exciting. Anything interesting happened in qualifying, Ross?
He's laughing already.
Well, I just keep hearing about what a magnificent lap Mr. Verstappen had, except that he didn't. It was an almost lap.
Right, 26
and
corners
almost
or something?
is only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades,
Yeah.
right? So I think the key is that he had, they said 0.4 of a second up at the second sector.
Right.
And he must have seen that on his steering wheel. You know
They
where
do.
you are. They
Yeah,
know what
they do. Yeah.
And you'd say, okay, let me ease up just a skosh. I got 0.4 to spare. I could give up almost 0.3 of it and still take pole, but he didn't do that.
Ross, you've spent hours behind the wheel of a racing car, thrashing it around racetracks, chasing cars that are faster than you. He was doing average lap speed, 140, 150 miles an hour, ridiculous lap speed. Fractions of a second. And as you know, when you get in the flow, when you feel like you're a paper boat that's just being blown down the avalanche, lifting in the last corner, being a little more conservative, that's not
what
really...
I said. But that's not what I said.
Okay.
Not lifting in the last corner, just saying I don't have to take the last
Push it
corner.
out to the wall.
I don't have to take it absolutely to the max.
Yeah.
I can take it at 98%
Yeah.
on the last corner.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then he got stifled at the end of that lap. It's too bad. I'm not a fan of that track, but it's like racing in a tunnel. I thought.
I thought it was cool. It looks like a game.
A lot of people did, yeah.
The,
And
the drivers loved it though. And they
did.
individually they were all raving
Just because of the
about it.
speed.
Yeah,
I think,
and the
you're
technical,
yeah.
and the challenge to them. You watch how fast all of them drove that track,
Yeah.
and you say there is a huge gulf between the good drivers and the great drivers, and those are great drivers.
Yeah.
yes.
All
Yeah,
I
it was
agree.
exceptional. It reminded me a lot of Singapore. I'm not a big fan of Singapore either. The only thing I like about Singapore is it is at night,
Yes.
and all the the hotel with the
Yep.
boat on top and the
Yep.
swimming pool 100 feet in the air. That
Yep.
part is cool.
Mhm.
But I don't care for the track. For a lot of the same reasons I think that you're talking about. It's just not that interesting. It reminds me of a street circuit that an IndyCar would go to.
Yeah.
With the running
That's
through walls
all I
and it's
could
kind of
think
featureless.
That's all I could think of was this is an IndyCar race.
Yeah.
Somebody
Or-
got lost.
Or Monaco on steroids.
Yeah.
True.
But Monaco's so
and,
cool.
and in the dark.
Well, they're,
in the dark.
they're talking about changing Monaco. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. Ross pointed out that in qualifying, the big deal was Verstappen hit the wall in his last sector of his go for a qualifying lap when he was up, giving the pole to Lewis Hamilton. Anything else interesting happened in qualifying before we get to the race?
Well, the Ferrari stuffed it in backwards. And
Right, Leclerc.
P3, I believe. P2, I don't remember.
Yeah,
Which was a shame, but again speaks to the safety of these cars.
Yes.
He was last clocked at 100.5, then he was parked like this. And you know where I'm going.
right.
And it's unbelievable, and backwards no less.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who should have had his head on the headers, no pun intended, but stood up, walked away, no problem.
Yeah,
These cars are safe.
And drove the next day.
Oh yeah,
Very well.
oh yeah.
finished.
Was it the same chassis? I don't know.
I think it was. I didn't
think
hear
it
about
was
it.
the same chassis,
Yeah.
but all new corners.
Speaks
Yeah.
to the ability of the mechanics.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Ferrari mechanics are probably just as good as we think they are.
exactly. And I think Ferrari again finished nose to tail, 5th and
Right.
6th, something like that. I mean,
Yes.
Ferrari's been doing very well.
Yep.
I think recently. All right, so now to the race. Standing start. It was Mercedes, Verstappen, right?
Right.
Yeah. Bottas was
Verstappen
second.
didn't get a great start. Remember when Hamilton was doing that years ago?
Yeah, having
When
trouble
he
starting.
couldn't
Yeah.
start to save his life. But and that happened to Verstappen this past weekend. But it was predictable. And he could have made it up, I think. But the race went as it went.
Well, he did make it up, didn't he? He passed off the track. Ocon and Hamilton got together. It was really hard for me to keep track of all the details in this race. So,
Well, the first pass Verstappen made into turn 1 and 2, which is a hard left and a right. It's almost a 90 and a 90 back. Okay, and the runoff area was broad enough that if you went out to the runoff, it was basically a 45-degree angle
and
to
a
get back
shortcut.
on the track.
Right.
So it was substantially faster to go off track.
Yeah.
True.
Okay,
Yeah.
which, okay, then if that were the track, fine, but it's not, and therefore, the track was designed to slow you down before you got into the set of chicanes that we're following.
Right.
I mean, that was the track design. So by avoiding that, by going off track, he picked up 3-4 car lengths, easy,
Well,
diagonally,
yeah.
and you can't advance. The rules are you can't advance your position off track.
Got to
Can't
give
do
it
it. You
back.
got to give it back.
Yeah, and nobody argued that, right?
Right.
Verstappen didn't argue it that we heard on the radio. Red Bull didn't argue it. And what did you think about Michael Massey before the restart negotiating with Red Bull before they took it to the stewards? as to
Never
whether-
heard of such a thing.
Never heard of such a thing.
That was a first for me.
I had not either, but I did some reading and I found out that that's very typical of what they do on the radio, but in much shorter compressed time. They give the team a chance to have their driver give the position back, or they'll take it to the stewards. And effectively, that's all he was doing.
Yes.
You could either give the position back, or I'm turning it over to the stewards, and they could probably hammer you worse than I will by having you give the position back.
Which they
So-
proved later in the race.
So the Red Bull team advisor said, "We'll give the position back."
Yeah.
Wise.
I guess that I heard also, Ross, that does happen quite a bit. But this new era where we actually get to listen in to all
Yeah.
these communications made
Right.
it brand new to all of us that have been watching it for.
Yeah, I was surprised we were privy to that.
It's the old adage about not watching sausage get made.
That's right. Yeah.
I used to love sausage.
So,
Okay.
all right. So the first restart, Verstappen, he wound up in front. They had to do, and why was the restart? Somebody wrecked? I forget why the first restart happened.
Well, it was
Debris. Was it?
the first restart was because of the accident that
Oh, what Haas ran into
back
the
of
Haas,
Yeah, yeah.
Schumacher.
Right, ran into the back of Russell or something.
Mick Schumacher went off track, and then
that
Mazepin
caused-
went into the back
Okay.
of Russell.
Okay.
Yeah,
Boy, did he.
boy did
Yeah.
he.
Yeah, that was scary.
But that was the first red flag, and so on the restart from that red flag, that's where there was some dispute about who took who
Yeah.
off
So
the track.
so on the restart from the first red flag, the first of the restarts, standing start, we had Hamilton, Ocon, who
right.
got past Bottas in that situation, Verstappen, and I guess Bottas was bumped back to fourth or fifth or something, maybe
Fifth.
further
Right.
back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now we have a new restart. Hamilton, Ocon, Verstappen is the first three, and this time, what happened with Verstappen?
Well, he
You don't
got
recall?
he
Yeah.
had a blazing start and moved up inside of Hamilton and did the same thing by going off track to the right again and took Hamilton with him this time. And so the kerfluffle was that the stewards. Well, then it was after that corner, going down the next set of chicanes where Russell got hit from behind, causing the next red flag,
Okay.
and that's when all this discussion about do you want to give the position back came from. Really,
Okay.
from that incident, and then the Red Bull team said, "Well, yeah, we'll give the position back," and that was the third kerfluffle.
So there was one restart where Verstappen killed it. He made a beautiful move down the inside. He passed
was
two
the
cars
third
at once.
restart.
That was the third restart.
Yep.
Okay. So this race was tough. Hopefully you
This-
watch it or you can watch it, our audience. But this race was brutal. I'm usually pretty good at keeping track of this stuff. I'm a little younger than Ross, but his memory is killing me right now. Really hard for me to keep track of. Really hard for me to understand exactly what was happening. All right. So third restart.
Well, the third restart, they had reordered because in the second restart, Hamilton.
Took a set of tires.
Well, no, Verstappen took a set of tires. Hamilton kept his hard tires in the first restart.
Correct.
So on the second restart, Hamilton was on hards and Verstappen was on medium. But they both went off the track, and in so doing, they both slowed down, and Ocon snuck through in between them and was in first.
Oh,
You remember
right.
that?
That was the
Last
second
thing
restart.
anyone expected.
Last thing
Yeah.
anyone expected. So on the second restart, the conclusion that Massey offered Red Bull was Ocon, Hamilton, Verstappen
Right.
at the restart. That's when Verstappen got that really super start down the inside and absolutely mailed it into the corner on the inside line while the other two were going wide, and he absolutely flew through the corner. It was an absolutely brilliant move.
It was beautiful.
Yep.
It was gorgeous. So when I thought the first red flag, Mercedes stopped for tires and Verstappen did not.
No, the other way around.
Okay. All right. See?
Yeah, Verstappen went first. And,
No, because
for tires.
No, Hamilton went
I thought
on the
Hamilton-
first safety car.
Mhm.
Both Bottas and Hamilton went in off a medium.
On the
Oh,
safety
before the
cars,
before the
right.
red
Before
flag.
the red flag.
That's right.
And that's what
Yeah.
everybody got so angry about was that Verstappen got a
Got a
free tire
free, yeah.
change.
Yeah. Well, that's in the rules.
I get that.
Yeah, and I don't understand that rule where you can work on the car and change tires under a red flag.
Another subject, but again, Mr. Norris,
Lando.
Lando had a very strong opinion that should be X'd out of the rule.
I don't know any other series that does that.
No. It-
I don't even.
Hamilton
Yeah.
made the comment.
It's
too.
a pure luck thing, and
Yep.
you get a random blessing of luck. It's just silly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a red flag means stop.
Right.
Everything stops.
Right.
The cars stop. The racing stops. The mechanics stop. Red flag means everything stops.
Changing tires
Classically.
stops.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
One
I mean,
would think.
yeah, exactly. The whole point of introducing the variety of changing tires at all is to add variables into the race that require some decision making and provides for better racing, so the cars mid-pack or in the back can make moves. So to give away a free tire stop like that seems to go against, otherwise, just fill them up with gas, put a set of tires on, and run it to the end.
Pretty much.
I agree.
Yeah. Speaking of full of gas, fuel.
Thank God we don't do that anymore.
Well, I was going to ask. I mean, how do you feel about refueling and not refueling?
Oh, too many people have been burned nearly to death.
Do you remember, what was it, about 2006 or 7, that the Ferrari that pulled out of the pits with the hose still
Yeah.
attached and yanked it
Yeah.
out of the fuel rig?
Spraying fuel everywhere.
Spraying fuel. No, I think that's a good thing to not refuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never need to do refills again on
Yeah.
track, on racing time.
Yeah. All right. So that one's
That's pure safety.
not
Yeah.
controversial. Linda, you look like you have something.
No, I have not. I'm with you.
Okay. All right. So, tell us just generally. We're trying to go play by play, and only Ross is able to keep up with that. What actually happened.
Well, this was
He's
probably
dictating
the
the pace.
wildest race
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
Same here.
Yeah, I mean,
Same here. Which was good and bad.
good and bad.
I
Yeah.
could have done without the restarts, and I could have done without Verstappen not acting his age.
Yeah.
I thought that he was very immature when he let off the gas with
Hamilton right behind him.
right behind him.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
We've
You
all,
can see him in the
He,
mirror.
he didn't just go off the gas, Jim.
I know, he hit the brakes.
He hit the brakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 2.4 G of braking at that point.
Yeah,
is-
the telemetry's
which is-
hard to fool.
Which
Yeah.
is 10,000 pounds per square inch of brake pressure.
Yeah,
Which is about half what the car will do. I think
That
it will
is,
do.
but that is not, I brushed the brakes.
Right.
That's
brushed.
So.
that's intentional.
So in my research and study since the race, in preparing to have this conversation with these guys, there's an in-car video of Verstappen at that point. It looks
Yes.
like you want to say
No,
something again.
go.
And he's slowing down. He's on the right-hand side of the track. His steering wheel never moves. It looks like from the outside of the car that he wanders back toward the middle of the track when it's about time for Hamilton to go by. The in-car camera shows that his steering wheel does not move. I think what happens is that the track somewhat narrows as you get down to that point. The rest of it is just as we saw Verstappen do a lap or two later, is that he was trying to time it so he could let Hamilton by prior to the DRS zone, and then get DRS, and then get back by Hamilton, which he did. So that's what they said he was trying to do. He was letting up, waiting for Hamilton to pass. They were coming up on the DRS zone. Hamilton wasn't passing, so he got on the brakes before he got to the DRS zone, and Hamilton mistimed
There
his
were
situation.
multiple excuses available to Verstappen,
Right.
and he chose the worst of all. He tapped the brakes.
Yeah.
That's just bad sportsmanship.
Well, fair enough. What about the trailing car is always responsible? What about that?
Not if the guy in front hits the brakes.
Well,
that changes everything.
the state police would argue with you, right? But what would a race steward have to say about that? The trailing car's responsible.
Well,
if I clip your bumper on the way by, that's on me, buddy.
I think we know what the race steward said because they said it. They said 5-second penalty.
Yes.
And then after the race, 10-second penalty.
Right.
For what was the word? Erratic driving.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the polite way of saying irresponsible.
Yeah.
Yeah. He should have acted his age. He started very young. He was the youngest ever at that time, I believe, when he started driving. And he's the wonder kid, but he just made a stupid error.
Yeah.
That's all there
Well,
is
I
to
don't
it.
think he was. I don't think it was a stupid error. I think that it was a calculated,
Well, it worked.
a calculated error.
Right.
I mean, a calculated move that became an error.
Yeah.
I think he was the whole idea of both of them slowing up, and why didn't Hamilton pass when
Correct.
he was supposed to? He wasn't told that he was getting the position back, and he has been burned by Verstappen doing erratic things in the past, so he was acting cautiously, but probably more than that. And I'm certainly not privy to Hamilton's strategic thinking, but I do know that he does do strategic thinking in the car.
Obviously.
And they were both, I think, thinking of that same deal about being behind at the DRS
At the
line,
DRS. Yep.
so that they had the benefit of DRS. Now, philosophically, if the message from race control is give the position back, is that ethically a proper giving the position back when you know that you've got an advantage? If you give the position back here, I'm not really giving the position back?
Well,
is that fair? I don't know.
It's a
Well,
good
again,
question.
He didn't know.
No,
Hamilton
I'm not talking about
didn't
Hamilton.
know.
I'm talking about Verstappen.
Right.
His motivation about not about giving the position back so that he had the DRS advantage
Mhm.
is effectively not giving the position back.
We're going to pick up on that in a second.
Okay.
I think we've hit the wall here on this particular segment. We'll be right back. This is Cars and Crafts with David and Linda, and Ross and Jim are our guests. Hold on a second, folks.